everyone. My name is Mike Iapoce. I'm the Commissioner for the Ulster County Department of Social Services, and I also serve as the chairperson of the Ulster County Older Adults Empowerment Council. It is my pleasure to welcome you all today to our information forum, which is titled, What Me Worry, How Ulster County is Responding to Ageism and Exploitation. Before we get started, I just wanted to go over a few Zoom keeping notes so that we're all on the same page. First and foremost, I would really like to thank all of you that registered for today's information forum and carved out time from your schedule. I think that you're going to find this to be a very engaging and informative forum, and we have some wonderful local speakers who are going to inform you about what's been happening in Ulster County with regard to this subject matter. Around Zoom keeping notes, I want to make sure that I do start out by thanking my assistant here at the Department of Social Services, Bette, who basically serves as the secretary for the Older Adults Empowerment Council, and without her organizational skills and oversight, we would not be able to be convening this forum today. The other person who we owe a lot of thanks to is Dana Umble. Dana is our technology support at Ulster County Community College, and she's the person who's coordinating the event on the Zoom format. And we're very, very grateful to Dana. Her talent and skill set around being able to coordinate these events virtually has made it possible for us to bring this forum back to you this year. Last year, I know we all experienced the impacts of the pandemic, and one of the effects of that was that we were not able to arrive at a point to be able to do this information forum last year. So we're very happy to be back this year and able to deliver this very important information forum to you. Just a little bit of history before we get started. The Older Adults Empowerment Council was formerly known as the Ulster County Elder Abuse Prevention Task Force, and we were formed back in 2014. And since that time, we've done an annual information forum in June of every year. And June is World Elder Abuse Awareness Month. And I also wanted to note that today, June 15th, happens to be World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. So the timing is perfect for us to be able to be bringing you this information forum on such an important day. And we're, again, very grateful for the support that we've received to make this event possible. The event is actually sponsored by the Ulster County Older Adults Empowerment Council and our Ulster County Executive, Patrick Ryan. One of Pat's major initiatives since taking office, I think it's been a couple of years now that he took office in June of 2019 after a special election, and then was elected later that fall to a 4-year term. And during Pat's time in office, he has emphasized how important it is for us to engage with everyone in our community. One of his main initiatives, again, is that no person is left behind. This includes everybody in our community, children, adolescents, young adults, middle-aged people, and older adults. His motto, his creed is no one is left behind. As public servants and providers in Ulster County, it's very important that we engage everybody in our community about their needs. And PAC greatly supports the efforts of the council, all of the activities that its membership is involved in. And I'm very pleased to be able to say that Pat has a welcome that he prepared. So we'll move right into Pat Ryan's welcome to this morning's event.
Good morning, this is County Executive Pat Ryan. Wish I could be with you all in person, but I'm really glad to be here virtually with you, and I look forward to seeing everyone in person. There could not be a more important moment for us to be getting together to have this conversation and really make sure that we are supporting our seniors at a time where we all have been, but especially our seniors have been through such a difficult year between the health worries and risks of COVID. In addition to today's conversation, a whole series of new threats and concerns as it relates to ageism and exploitation of our seniors. So it's so important, and I'm so appreciative of you all being here to have this conversation. I especially want to thank our panelists that are going to inform us and engage us and really help us all do this collective work together. More than anything, as we open up today's session, I just want you all to know from me personally and on behalf of the 180,000 residents of our county, we fully support and have the backs of our seniors, making sure that you're taken care of in every way that we can. Anything you need, you can always reach out to me. And I know this is just one of the many things that our Office for the Aging and our collective team, Ulster County, are doing. So I look forward to the conversation. Thank you all for joining. And I look forward to seeing you all soon in person.
Thank you, Pat, for those welcoming remarks. And I should emphasize, as Pat opened up with, it would be wonderful to be able to be convening in person. We're hopeful that we're moving in the direction that we'll begin to be able to start to do that again. So, and as Pat also pointed out, our entire community has just navigated through a very challenging time. And he definitely points out that older adults in our community have experienced that in unique ways. I think what's very timely about today's information forum is the fact that we're going to hear from service providers in Ulster County from their perspectives about how they've continued to be able to provide services. I want to say collectively about our panel members today. I've had the pleasure to work alongside many of them for many, many years, and they're all dedicated professionals and very kind individuals who care deeply about this subject matter. And to have people of this caliber in our county who are devoted to this subject matter and making a contribution, I think, as Pat indicated, is just so vitally important. I'm just going to also mention that we will have a Q&A at the end of the presentation. So there will be an opportunity to ask questions of each of our panelists. And we've carved out some time at the end. So if you have a question, you can jot that down, and we'll be able to keep track of doing that at the end of the presentation. So we're going to open up with a presentation from Susan Koppenhaver. Sue is our director of the Ulster County Office for the Aging, and she also happens to be my neighbor here at Development Court. So I see her waving to me. We have worked very closely together with many other members of the Ulster County workforce in connection with our response, and it's been an absolute pleasure to work with Sue during this time in terms of making sure that we continue to deliver essential services and programs. I think you're going to find Sue's remarks, again, very informative in terms of what has been transpiring. So we will kick off the presentations with Sue's remarks. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us for these important topics that concern our elders in our community. My name is Sue Koppenhaver. I'm the director of the Ulster County Office for Aging. As a member of an area office for aging, we get a lot of concerns from elders about ageism and exploitation, like, why doesn't this exist? Why can't I do that? This is too difficult for me and other seniors, and why are we left out of the loop? And communications, either as phone calls, emails, text, or even US mail to try and financially exploit seniors in the form of scams is something we hear about all the time. We don't always have the answers, but we try and find a solution that may work. So there are many ways that ageism and exploitation persist, but I will give some recent examples that may reverberate with our listeners, specifically concerning the pandemic and things related to it. The COVID vaccine rollout was designed for people who were email or internet or tech savvy in mind, probably by millennials. It did not take into consideration the elders who either have no computer or do not understand how to fill out forms online, or have not embraced tech or virtual ways to connect, or even have a computer or a tablet or a smartphone. Some may have had help from family members. Many, however, were left out in the cold, as displayed by their frustration in the literally thousands of phone calls to our offices and offices like ours across New York State. There was no mechanism put in place to support phone-only vaccine appointments. It seemed after some legislators heard about the issue that after the fact fixes were put in place to allow the pharmacies to offer vaccines, and we were just recently given links to make appointments. This was a couple months ago. We had to come up with a mechanism by which we captured their information, and had to wait till we knew when a date and time were available for appointments. The county came up with a very neat system to register everybody through New York State, so they would at least be in a system registered when an appointment became available. This isn't particular to ageism toward the elderly either. The poor and disenfranchised parts of the population were not able to access appointments either. Although things are opening up and now walk-ins are available, we expect the same frustration about this lack of support as well. Our solutions were as following: asking staff to call groups on lists, making appointments when we actually had some set aside by the county, saying you have 200 appointments for seniors, call them out for this day and this time. Links to available appointments right on the spot, a recent advantage, and calling everyone we had on a list. It was time consuming and yielded a lot of appointments, but we also found out that many elders must have had help from others to make appointments, as by the time we were able to access appointment links, many had already either had vaccines or were scheduled to get them, which was welcome news. Luckily, the timing of not having office planned senior events freed up staff to be able to increase their ability to call elders for appointments. Mid-April, the supply started outpacing the demand, fortunately. Ageism rears its head in other aspects of our life here as well. Transportation systems, especially partly rural bus systems, cannot satisfy needs of elders who often have specialist appointments out of county or the area. The elder must rely on family who still may be working full-time and have difficulty freeing themselves up for hours of driving in appointments and waiting for their elder to finish and then taking them home. Or neighbors or friends, that happens a lot. Our Neighbor to Neighbor program, which is a volunteer driving program through the Jewish Family Services, was a successful program before the pandemic, but it reduced itself through fear of close quarters and people driving in your car. They don't know what their status of, whether they would be infected or not. And therefore it hasn't been able to be utilized for many months. We always need help in this program, as many seniors can no longer drive or have voluntarily given up their licenses. Other piecemeal solutions don't adequately address the need. Our solution is inadequate, but all we have presently, except for relying on friends and family. Ideally, a system that picks elders up, perhaps as groups for a day, and takes them where they need to go, and able to satisfy all the needs around any given county would be a great solution. This would also help the disabled and those without personal transportation, regardless of their age. Currently in this county, our OFA funds a full-time bus driver through our UCAT system who drives a bus able to pick up small groups of seniors who may need help in and out of the bus, and who are able and need transportation to a doctor's appointment or shopping. This service is constantly being utilized and at this point cannot even serve all who need it. It is not ideal, but a partial solution to this challenge. A cadre of shopping and errand volunteers would work as well. The physically handicapped may be able to access other types of transportation, and many on Medicaid can access this. But many of the elders we serve do not qualify for Medicaid, so have to rely on a system that is based on state and federal funding through our grants from the state and the feds, which is sometimes pretty limiting in scope. Considering the pandemic, transportation to vaccine sites was difficult for those off the regular bus lines and extremely challenging for those who have mobility issues, and impossible for those who are homebound, as many elders are, or their caregivers who are not homebound but cannot leave them alone to get their own vaccine. That was an issue we came up with a lot with our homebound list. That like I said, that necessitated the establishment of a homebound vaccine list, which was taken up regularly by the Department of Health and their nurses as Johnson & Johnson vaccine became available, as that was the easiest then to transport. My understanding now is that all the vaccines can be transported to the home. Home care is a system that, if adequately funded, would serve a large majority of elders in the community. Unfortunately, due to Medicaid budgeting and the struggle over minimum wage levels in both the state and the country, home care workers are inadequately compensated for their work and often work without health benefits or paid time off. Ageism in this regard is more subtle, as many home care workers are single women with families, often women of color, attributing other isms to an already burdened system, trying to adequately staff and fund this crucial part of the healthcare delivery system. As most nursing homes, assisted living, and home care serve primarily elders, and the homes too are inadequately staffed, it becomes more obvious that healthcare for ill, frail, or disabled elders and those unable to care for themselves is inadequate and becoming dangerous. We see a more subtle ageism here, as the elders and frail are not part of the forefront in thinking about healthcare. Moreover, home care availability seemed to drop precipitously during COVID due to many factors, not the least of which was fear, the transportation of the aides who aren't willing to drive very far because, again, they're not adequately compensated. They have vehicles that aren't great. They can't afford the gas, and no vaccines in place for months, and lack of staff over the entire region. During COVID, we were faced with a large portion of elders who had to be isolated from society due to possibility of contagion, and for some, their frailty. And the result was a large increase in isolation and depression. Matilda's law came out from the state, and our elders took it very seriously. They called our office, afraid to go out or shop or get meals or drive or generally be in public. We had to cease all in-person programming and congregate meals almost immediately. We also switched to once-a-week frozen meal delivery instead of daily hot deliveries, as it lessened contact with drivers and clients as well. We then instituted an additional weekly call to those folks to check on them regularly, as we were not contacting them or seeing them 5 days a week with hot meals anymore. We consequently saw a very large increase in numbers of elders calling for inclusion in our warm call program, which is comprised of volunteers calling elders weekly just to check on them, to make sure they have what they need, and just to try to refer them to resources when appropriate, and for them just to hear a friendly voice on the phone. We had to recruit additional volunteers to handle the increased burden, which we were glad to do. However, no system was in place to carry these burdens, and we had to piecemeal a volunteer staff system in place to handle these immediate food and grocery needs during the pandemic. Another form of ageism increasingly seen in healthcare is the medical community's seeming disinterest in the subspecialty of gerontology. For some who welcome the opportunity to study and treat older adults, it would seem that those interested would have a wide open field of patients, as there seems to be a lack of interest and involvement in this field, and there are very few gerontologists in our area. It was explained to me that the field isn't terribly well stocked with any providers. It is not as lucrative as other subspecialties such as orthopedics or neurology, also who might treat a larger population of elders and do. One solution for this is ensuring that gerontology as a subspecialty is better reimbursed, considering that elders have many comorbidities and few visits are just simple checkups. The mechanism for doing that is more complicated, but as more Americans age and the population of older adults becomes larger as elders live longer, this will become a necessity in the medical field. Other barriers to keeping seniors at home, although it may not fall directly under ageism, are the lack of people willing to supply home chores and simple fix-it types of services at reduced prices for those living at home. I think we would all agree that living at home for as long as possible would be preferable to any congregate site for most elders, and keeping a home livable is crucially important, and keeping it safe. Seniors need a place that is livable, walkable, able to be entered and lived in without a trial, and handicapped accessible for those with mobility devices and mobility challenges. We have a small solution in this challenge whereby we contract with a local accessibility company, but we have limited funding for this. As mentioned before, personal help at home, even without personal care, such as homemaking services, which would supply light housekeeping, laundry, cleaning, shopping, things like that, which would keep a person or a senior at home far longer, and for the funders much more inexpensively, would be the addition of help at home. But as discussed above, this too is a huge challenge right now across our country for many reasons. Ageism and exploitation of elders is very apparent in the targeting of elders over their phones, email, or snail mail through increasingly clever schemes and scams to rip off elderly and vulnerable people. Using pretend family ties or lack of knowledge about how federal agencies work and communicate, or blatant threats to utility cutoffs or warnings about their computers and their systems and other exploitive devices we hear often, unfortunately after the fact. How elders are taken advantage of and used for monetary gain is something we experience almost weekly. I am sure Mr. Clegg may have already spoken about this pervasive epidemic, but it is always worth mentioning. There are so many scams and so many new ones popping up that they are almost impossible to keep up with. We have regular scam alerts in our newsletter, and when we can gather again, we'll resume presenting them to our senior groups on a regular basis. But the pervasiveness of this practice is staggering and almost impossible to keep up as far as the type of scam. To me, this is a huge, huge issue of ageism. Ageism can be blatant or very subtle and include other isms as well, as the very folks serving the elder population are victims of other societal isms and the challenges facing those groups. Both the home care workers, the populations that become the staff of those groups, and the elders are immense and not easily solvable without radical changes to the healthcare reimbursement system. Some major changes could address both the home care worker shortage and the gerontologist issues we have facing us today in the form of reimbursement for home-based care as opposed to institutionalization. Changes to a medical system that seems to be geared toward treatment of disease and payment for treatment would seem as though it would be ideal for elders, but it is not the case. Most of the costs associated with seniors are usually in the last years of life, when a decline or a fall may necessitate a nursing home stay, subsequent rehab and home care, or permanent placement in a facility of some type. For instance, more robust and inclusive programs to keep strength and reduce falls would address some of these challenges directly. All offices for aging have programs such as these, but I do believe they need to be much more widespread, and the lack of broadband, the expense of cable without discounts that are meaningful for seniors, prevent many elders from accessing these types of programs in their own homes. Once a senior's assets are tapped out, they must apply for Medicaid, which adds to the cost overall for Medicare for seniors. With seniors living longer, a more out-of-the-box solution for perhaps congregate yet independent living with support on site might have advantages over single living, although we all know many elders who are bound and determined to live there in their homes forever, as I am one of them. People in general are living longer and therefore more likely to develop dementia, which adds to care burdens, costs, and concerns about single living as well. Dementia care usually refers to seniors as well, although most dementias do not occur until after age 50 at least. We have many challenges facing us as caregivers, advocates, and seniors ourselves soon. The burden of our society to change its perspective to include funding to elder care to try and prevent some of the costs associated with aging that might be anticipated is a huge paradigm shift in caring for elders. Progressive thinking by younger generations to include elder care is essential, as those generations will face these shortfalls themselves if these challenges are not addressed now. They can better prepare for their own futures by looking now at challenges and trying solutions to solve challenges for today's and future elders. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sue, for those remarks. I just am so impressed by your knowledge and expertise, but working with you every day, I also know there's a large dose of common sense and decency that you bring to trying to address all of those challenging issues. And listening to what you talked about, just taking inventory on what was able to be arrived at in terms of implementing solutions to continue to be able to accomplish delivering services. It's just really staggering. I don't know that we have had the chance to take the time to review what has been accomplished because it's all happened so quickly. I just want to emphasize to everybody that I know Sue is an incredible resource to us here in Ulster County. She would be available to talk about all of these issues with any of you, and she will be on our panel at the end of the presentations. But thank you so much. Just overwhelming what you've been able to accomplish, and with the consideration that you have accomplished, you and all of your staff at OFA, just tremendous people. Doing incredible work. So thank you for that, and we'll look forward to having you join us later.
Thanks, Mike.
You're welcome. Our next speaker is David Clegg, Esquire, Ulster County District Attorney. Dave was elected at the end of 2019 and took office in the beginning of 2020 without any real indication, like most of us, of what was in store for him. Not even considering some of the technical challenges around legislation that had just been implemented for bail reform and discovery requirements around criminal proceedings. Then he was faced with navigating through the pandemic. And during that time, his office needed to comply with the Office of Court Administration's protocols as well as the county's protocols. He's led the district attorney's office and done a phenomenal job under very stressful circumstances. He's also made himself available to our council. I have the privilege of also collaborating with Dave on other initiatives in the county that are very important. For the last 30 years, he's been a friend and a colleague in private practice and now in public service. So I'm very grateful to Dave for the time he took to prepare remarks that will address ageism and exploitation from his perspective in the Ulster County District Attorney's Office. So we'll move right along into the remarks from Dave. One last Zoom keeping note is that I did not mention, you probably all have noticed that there is closed caption on the bottom of the screen. So that'll help you to be able to keep track of all of the remarks that are being shared. So I just wanted to point that out. I had neglected to do so earlier. So here we're next going to hear from Dave Clegg. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm your Ulster County District Attorney, Dave Clegg. It's a great pleasure to be with you all today, even if it's only virtual. I want to thank County Executive Pat Ryan and Commissioner Mike Iapoce for inviting me, and to the Ulster County Older Adults Empowerment Council for providing this very important event. The Ulster County District Attorney's Office takes elder abuse and financial exploitation extremely seriously. We have a financial crimes unit as well as a consumer affairs unit that addresses many of these scams and exploitations that occur. I want to make sure, and I want you to know, that we want to protect every senior in our community. And so we are always available. If you have questions or if some concern comes up that you're not sure about, please call us. We not only have ADAs, assistant district attorneys, we have investigators and potentially forensic accounting folks that can help address any financial crimes that are going on. So I would like to talk about the issues at scams, because in our community, most of the ways that people attempt to financially embezzle or take money away from seniors is through calls and scams. So according to the National Council on Aging and the FBI, seniors lose more than $3 billion each year to fraudsters. Scammers go after seniors because they believe older adults have a significant amount of money in their accounts, and they do. It's such a sad thing, and I've heard too many sad stories where people have large amounts in a savings account, and somebody comes and calls them and pretends to be someone else and somehow gets their financial information. And that financial information allows them to get a hold of the money that should otherwise be protected. So that's what we're talking about here, is making sure that you are aware of all the ways in which people might come at you to try and get information which will allow them to steal your money. Low-income and older adults are also at risk of financial abuse, often committed by an older person's own family members. As I say, unfortunately, elder abuse can happen from a lot of different places, from people we don't know, from strangers, sometimes from neighbors, sometimes from friends, and unfortunately, sometimes from our own family members. And I've seen that happen, and it's something that you have to be aware of. It's always horrible to think that your own family member might do something, but I have seen those kinds of harms happen. And some of the things that you have to watch out about are whenever you have a joint checking account, if the other person on the joint checking account is a family member or a friend, they automatically have access to that money. And it will not be a crime if they take that money and use it for their own purposes. We had a case like that in this office, and it was a great crime that we could not proceed because that person had a legal authority to use that money. So that's something you should be aware of and concerned about. The top 10 scams, let's talk about them. Government imposter scam. If you get a call, and many of these imposters use the IRS, claiming that you may have some tax obligation that you haven't met. And whether you do or you don't doesn't matter, but they get you scared that in fact there's something out there that you didn't pay, and therefore ask for information. So anybody who calls you up and starts to ask you for your social security number or any kind of identification that, and you don't have any information about who this is other than what they represent, I will tell you that it is not the Social Security Department calling you. It is a scammer, and you need to be protective anytime somebody calls and represents that they are coming from a government agency. The grandparent scam. One of the things that happens is that they might get some information about you and find out the names of your grandchildren. And unfortunately, with social media being what it is, some of this information is out there. And if they get a hold of that, they might try and call you, say your grandchild, name the grandchild is in some kind of trouble. Would you please forward this money? This is a kind of scam that you need to be doubly concerned about. And the way to make sure that that there's not some kind of real problem going on is to ask them to verify their identity by every way possible. It is most likely something that is a scam. And so obviously the first thing to do is to contact your relatives. If it's claiming to be a grandchild, call their mother and father and other family members and make sure that there's something real going on and that you're not being taken advantage of. Medical device fraud. So there are people who call you up and ask for, once again, information about you. What's your Medicare number? We're going to provide you with a special knee brace or a shoulder brace or some kind of rehabilitative medical device. And the whole scam is about trying, once again, to get your information, whether it be bank or bank account or credit card numbers or social security numbers. All these things are things that can be used to steal money from you. And you should be very concerned about anybody who calls you up, pretends to be from a medical provider of some sort and wants to get your information. Once again, if that happens, make sure you call your own medical provider up and find out if whoever they say they are is coming from a real place. And if not, obviously you don't offer them any information in the first call, no matter what. Computer tech and support scams. There's a big problem out there in the world of computers. You can be hacked. People can hack your computer and then give you some kind of option. If you pay us this much money, heaven forbid, they want Bitcoins or something like that, that we will release the information in your computer. Or just like this particular item is that they're calling up once again to pretend that they're going to scan your computer and seek remote access to your computer. If they do, it could be part of a hacking enterprise. So Microsoft, Dell, Apple, computer companies are not going to call you. If somebody calls up, just hang up. Just hang up if that's what they've told you they're going to do. Publishers Clearinghouse, we all heard about all the prizes that come through that. Once again, if anybody says, if you pay this amount of money, you're going to get a prize, it's probably somebody calling from Nigeria and is trying to get you to send money, to wire money to a certain location with the idea that you're going to then get a whole large amount of prize money for something. It is totally a scam. It is many times operated from outside the United States. Once again, the Publishers Clearinghouse does not call you to say that you've won. And if anybody calls you up and wants money from you in order to get your prize, that's an automatic signal that in fact it's a scammer. Caller ID and spoofing. One of the things, unfortunately, that folks are able to do now is to give a caller ID number that isn't the same as their real number. So it might be coming from a location that you think might be appropriate for this particular call. And once again, they become identity thieves. They want to know bank account numbers, credit card numbers, social security numbers. They want to know what your financial situation is with different accounts that you may have. Once again, if you get a call where somebody is claiming that they are somebody that is has a right to your financial information, it's highly unlikely that they do, and it's something you should be very skeptical about. And the best thing, once again, is not to give them any information, to get whatever information they can give you, and then double check whether or not that's accurate. Dating and romance scams, an interesting area. I can't speak to what goes on in dating sites, but this is my expert in the area of consumer affairs, and says that you should not be going to dating sites that are free or chat rooms. You could be taken advantage of. Obviously, if there's some connection with some picture from some person, it may be a picture of that person, or once again, it could be a scammer. If anybody asks you for money or information on a dating site, once again, you should avoid doing that in almost every case until you get some kind of verification that you're a real person on the other side, as opposed to somebody who is trying to take advantage of you. As my consumer advocate says, if something feels wrong, it probably is. Extortion scams is something that, once again, many times happens with people saying that you're going to be arrested for something. I'm sure that every one of you has done nothing that you could even think could be a crime, and therefore this kind of call would not go very far with you. Of course, the FBI is not looking at you, law enforcement agencies are not looking at you, but sometimes people can panic, and sometimes people can become afraid and actually give information, or heaven forbid, wire money to somebody to avoid what they think is a possible arrest. If anything like that happens, once again, you should immediately stop. But here's some information about where you can complain to the FBI about any kind of call that you get. Fake debt collectors, that's a very popular one. Many of us have some kind of credit card debt. Somebody can call up and say that you're behind in your payments, that something bad is going to happen to your credit rating, or something bad is going to happen to your credit card unless you give them information right away that will pay for this particular amount. And once again, double check, triple check, don't give information out over the phone. If it is something real, and it very likely is not, you can double check with your own credit card companies to see if in fact there's anything that you need to be concerned about. Otherwise, give no information. And there is contact places that you can go to get credit reports to make sure that your credit is okay. You should go there as opposed to conversing with anybody on a telephone call or in an email about your credit situation. Charity scams. There are people that call up, unfortunately, and are representing charities that may be very questionable merit. And we all know that that happens. I would recommend to all of you that you go to a place like give.org, charity reviews, and a national review of what charities you can trust. People can reach out to you from a charity that sounds very noble, help veterans of a particular war, and let's make sure that they're taken care of in their old age or whatever it might be. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is a real charity that you can trust, or that 70 or 80% of that money isn't actually going into the pockets of somebody else than who they're collecting the charity for. So that's something, once again, to be very concerned about and to be careful about. So for more information on any of these topics or to file a complaint, contact the Ulster County District Attorney's Office, Division of Consumer Affairs at this number, 340-3260. As I say, you can call my office at any time. There is support here. We do have investigators, and we want to make sure that every person in our community is protected, especially those who are elderly and might need some support. So thank you very much. It's my pleasure. I wish we could all be present together, but I look forward to the rest of this event. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dave. Really compelling remarks. Sobering and valuable information for all of us to just try to be vigilant about in connection with all of our everyday transactions. And the fact that some of these scams are arrived at, really also reflects the creativity of people out there that are trying to take advantage of others. And again, I want to emphasize that I know in connection with many cases that we've collaborated on between Department of Social Services, Adult Protective Services Unit, and the DA's office. Your office has always been there to support us in terms of interventions and investigations and trying to arrive at some outcomes that can help people to get back to where they were before they were taken advantage of. Just one point and an observation. One of the reasons that many people are reluctant to report financial exploitation is that they're concerned that a family member or friend may be prosecuted. And that does not always necessarily end up happening. The involvement of Adult Protective Services, law enforcement, the district attorney's office can sometimes persuade a wrongdoer to make amends for what they did without it necessarily involving a prosecution. And to know that we have the full faith and credit of the district attorney's office in connection with supporting us in those interventions is extremely meaningful. So very much appreciate the information you provided, your remarks, and your ongoing support. And also want to finally emphasize, just reach out to Dave's office. They will have the conversation with you with consideration and dignity and respect for your circumstances. You do have somewhere to turn to if you find yourself in a situation like this. I want to also make another Zoom keeping note that please feel free to use the chat feature to submit questions while the event is taking place. Just please identify who your question is directed at so that we can start to keep track of questions when we do start the Q&A. Our next presenter is Sharon Murray-Cohen, and she is the Executive Director of Jewish Family Services. Sharon is going to be talking about Ulster County's enhanced multidisciplinary team and what does it do. And just using the word multi is appropriate for Sharon because multi-talented, multitasker for many years in our community, doing a variety of work, an incredible skill set, very talented in terms of making sure that needs in our community are being met. She is going to be joined during her presentation with Nicholas Morris and Jason Farina, who are a couple of our colleagues who help with the EMDT. So we're looking forward to hearing from Sharon and her colleagues on this initiative, which is making progress in our community, doing some really specialized work. So our next presenter is Sharon Murray-Cohen, and we'll hear from her about the enhanced multidisciplinary team in Ulster County.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sharon Murray-Cohen. I am the Executive Director of Jewish Family Services of Ulster County. It is a pleasure to be here today and to present with my two colleagues, Nicholas Morris and Jason Farina. Nick is the coordinator of the EMDT program, and Jason is assistant coordinator. My role in this presentation is to give you the statistics and the background information. Nick and Jason will explain the program and give you some case examples. First, the problem. Elder abuse is a social problem, and it is a preventable social problem. It is impacting many of our most vulnerable individuals. This is not just a local problem, it is worldwide. Thus, today is World Elder Abuse Day. It is found in all communities and is not limited to individuals of any race, ethnic or cultural background, socioeconomic status, or sexual orientation. Elder abuse is often hidden and unreported. Statewide, for every reported case of elder abuse, 23.5 cases go unreported. There are many forms of elder abuse: physical, emotional, sexual, and neglect. And neglect includes self-neglect. By far, financial exploitation is the most common form of elder abuse, being almost twice as common as the second most common form of abuse, physical abuse, statewide. For every reported case of financial exploitation, 43.9 cases go unreported. Individuals with Alzheimer's disease and other neurodegenerative impairments are at a greater risk. Individuals with Alzheimer's are also at risk for other forms of elder abuse. Informal caregivers and family, friends are most often the perpetrators. Older adults who are socially isolated are at increased risk for elder abuse. This risk factor has been exacerbated by the COVID-19 public health crisis. As many adults have become socially isolated, reports of elder abuse have increased. Many older adults are forced to isolate with abusers, and there has been an increase in financial scams targeting older adults. Well, at this point, you are probably saying, so what is being done about this problem? Well, this is where I turn it over to Jason and Nick to tell you about our elder abuse enhanced multidisciplinary teams. Ulster's team has been in operation since 2017. In 2019, because of the success of the Ulster team, we were awarded a grant to establish EMDTs in Dutchess, Orange, Sullivan, and Rockland counties. Take it away, Jason.
Hi, guys. My name is Jason Farina from Jewish Family Services of Ulster County. I'm the assistant coordinator for the Enhanced Multidisciplinary Teams, or EMDTs, in the Hudson Valley region. So what the heck is an EMDT? It's a task force of professionals from a variety of disciplines and organizations with the focus of stopping elder abuse and financial exploitation. So we focus on how to best provide services to victims and also how to prosecute potential perpetrators as well. On these EMDTs, we'll have law enforcement departments, we'll have adult protective services, Office for the Aging, we'll have specific financial institutions, the district attorney, crimes victim services, Department of Social Services. We also have a lot of nonprofits, basically any organization that's going to have contact with the elderly. So we run EMDTs in Ulster, Dutchess, and Orange County, and also soon to be Sullivan and Rockland County as well. What I do is I mostly focus on recruitment for these EMDTs. We want to actually expand them and have more organizations, thus offering a lot more resources and services. We're funded by the U.S. Department of Justice Office of Crime Victims, and also by New York State Office for the Aging, and also Lifespan of Greater Rochester. So why do we need these EMDTs? Why are we doing this? Why are we focused on elder abuse and financial exploitation? Well, this is extremely prevalent, and before there's nothing being done about it at all. They say 1 in 10 older adults are abused, neglected, or financially exploited every year. Many older adults have no family, or they have no network, no one to help them at all. Many times it could even be caregivers that are doing the exploiting or taking advantage of these elderly people. Financial scams have also become even more common with COVID, as certain people have lost a lot of opportunities, and people are certainly a lot greedier and desperate for money now. And of course, older adults are even more vulnerable to these scams because they might not be so tech literate or so aware of these scams. And scammers are becoming a lot more sophisticated with how they get a victim to reveal important information over the phone or via email. They're getting very good at duping victims into giving them money or personal information. So again, the purpose of these EMDTs is to do something about these cases of elder abuse and financial exploitation. And we're bringing together different professionals with different skill sets and abilities to identify, investigate, and to intervene in cases of elder abuse, right? With the purpose of restoring safety and security to older adults and helping them protect their assets. So for example, we have forensic accountants on our team. They'll look over financial documents and they can see an account where maybe money was transferred to, if someone got money taken out of their account. We have law enforcement of the DA. They can think of ways to move forward to help prosecute potential perpetrators. We also have a civil attorney that can offer legal advice to victims. We have nonprofits, and we have the Office of the Aging, and we have adult protective services that can offer certain resources and services to victims. So again, these EMDTs, they're the needed platform to actually solve these individual cases and to help victims.
Thank you, Jason. My name is Nick Morris, and I am the EMTT coordinator. My primary job is to make sure everything is up and running, especially in our 5 counties here in the Hudson Valley Hub. Now, I can't stress just how important our group is, per se, especially in the state of New York. New York State is one of the few states where we do not require institutions to report elderly abuse. We have one for child labor, but child labor and child abuse, but nothing for the elderly. And with the growing population of baby boomers, they're definitely going to need some help in that regard, especially since majority of our clientele and victims are 60 plus. So they're coming from an age where we don't have where they didn't have smartphone, computers, and so forth. So they enter this whole new, I want to say, world or generation. And they need our help, especially around here. Now another thing that we do is we provide benefits, especially to the small towns around here, where they may not have the funding to prosecute these cases compared to our New York City counterpart. So that's probably another reason why we are here, to help those who are needed. Again, just like what Jason said, we do provide services such as financial accounting, which has been greatly appreciated by our local law enforcement. For example, we had a couple cases where the victim themselves were duped by a stranger over the phone or by email, where they go and claim, "Hey, hello, hi, it's me, Grandma, it's a grandson," which is probably one of the most popular scams out there. And to get to the point where they're like, oh, hey, "Hey grandson, how you doing?" And then they make up a story where, let's say they got into a car accident or they got arrested for drunks. They prey on their feelings and their weaknesses of a potential family member getting hurt, financially or physically, or even just by the law. So they take advantage of their weaknesses, ask them for money, usually a couple $1,000, and our job is to help those who are in need of assistance. And a lot of them don't come out up and say it because they're all ashamed of how their family members perceive them to be, especially going through the age from, let's say, from 20 and up, where they were more independent. They're viewed as more like a hierarchy in the family household, and to have their status being threatened because they made some mistake of falling for some pretty simple scam, it can be really damaging to them. So for us, for the state of New York, to not have a some sort of required policy to maintain institutions or someone in the professional field to report these abuses, you really make it into like a silent crime where it's so rampant, but no one's talking about it. So that's why we are here in New York, to help those who are needed, especially here in upstate. And hopefully in the next couple of years we can make a dent in that statistics and help those who desperately need help.
I'd like to add a couple of things. What Nick is actually talking about is New York State is the only state that does not have required mandated reporting. Mandated reporting is required, the term is that professionals who are involved with the victim must report to a central database, and it has to be investigated within a certain number of hours, days, depending upon the criteria that has been set. We do not have that. What we do have is Adult Protective Services, which is the entity that you call if you as an individual believe that someone who is an elder is being abused. And the other thing that I would like to add is that it would be helpful if New York State were to add a mandated reporting for seniors.
With regard to the presentation from Sharon and Jason and Nicholas, I wanted to just commend all of them for the work that they've been doing. When this initiative arrived in Ulster County, we were able to have their meetings convened here at the Department of Social Services. And I know that it was a collaborative effort and it was a multidisciplinary effort. We have law enforcement, the district attorney's office, service providers, adult protective services, and it's vitally important. I think one of the collateral impacts from having enhanced multidisciplinary team has been that it's one of the ways that we promote that these services are available. And I think Sharon and Jason and Nicholas all emphasize that help is available. And when word spreads among people that are affected by circumstances like this and they receive help, it can just be incredibly impactful. So again, I really appreciate the efforts of the enhanced multidisciplinary team, the work they're focusing on. They do collaborate with other professionals and it is very impactful. So thank you all very much. Our final panelist is Bette Moskowitz. She is, among other things, currently the author of a book titled Finishing Up on Aging and Ageism. One of the best experiences that I have arrived at as a result of participating previously in the Elder Abuse Prevention Task Force and now the Older Adults Empowerment Council has been being able to work with Bette and learn firsthand from her about her insights and expertise and perspective on aging and ageism. She does it in a very thoughtful, sometimes humorous way that we can all relate to. And I really think it's going to be a great way to wind down the forum. So we will now hear from Bette Ann Moskowitz. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Bette Ann Moskowitz. I'm a writer, teacher, and an old person. As a writer and a teacher, I've been interested in old people since I was a young person. I've written fiction, and when my mother, a brilliant woman, descended into dementia, I wrote a memoir about it. For a lot of the years that I was talking and studying and thinking about aging, I was a spectator at the event. And then when my mother got sick, I became more of a participant. And then I became old. And what I discovered was that I was not only writing and thinking and talking about old age, but I was also discovering ageism as well. To age is human. We reach majority, we come into maturity, we celebrate our milestones, we light candles for every passing year until we get old. And then we turn away and deny it and decry it. Why? This is what I'm exploring, the incomprehensible fact of ageism and what it feels like to live through it. In 1969, Robert Butler, a gerontologist, coined the phrase, defining it as prejudice against old people and carrying out discriminatory practices based on those prejudices. In my book, Finishing Up on Aging and Ageism, I talk about ageism in a slightly different way. I call it a cultural cage. Picture it. I want you to picture it. Wide and tall, like a bird cage with bars, mostly invisible, and encompassing all of us. Because the world is a going concern when we're born into it, both our own worlds and the world at large. That is, if we're breastfed rather than bottle fed, if we're spanked rather than spoiled. That's the culture. We don't notice it or question it. That's just the way things are. That's the culture. And what we don't know, we don't know. And that's the cage. When it comes to aging in America, the bars of the cultural cage consist of hanging on to those beliefs and prejudices and stereotypes that we grew up with. What kind of prejudices am I talking about? Well, first of all, thinking about all of us as one homogenized group. Secondly, assigning qualities and characteristics to that homogenized group, mostly negative. We're all bingo players. We're all retirees. We all forget things a lot. We all tell too long stories. We're cranky. We think conservatively. People over 60, 70 now are expected to be slow, failing in health and mind, uninterested in going out dancing or having sex. Even though some of those characteristics are valid for some of us, they're not for all of us. And the expectations are mostly negative. And if you don't meet those expectations, it's not that the expectations are wrong. It's, well, God bless you. You're an anomaly. You're different. It's in our language. On social media, for instance, the phrase, okay, boomer, has been popular lately as a dismissal of an old idea, like children should be seen and not heard. If you say, okay, boomer to that, it means, we know, let's move on, not anymore, you're behind the times. And by the way, when the pandemic hit, okay, boomer became boomer doomer and boomer remover to describe the pandemic. Kind of grisly. But in the language, we see it and we hear it. You see it on birthday balloons. We're over the hill if we're over 50. We're having senior moments, and all of us have tried to show our embarrassment at not remembering something by calling it before somebody else calls it. We're losing our marbles. It's in our language. Ageism is in everyday lives in a lot of ways. For instance, take a little time, sit one night and notice the commercials that you're seeing on television. You would think that older people are not interested in buying cars, eating pizza, doing gardening, going on road trips, going on vacation, because you'll never see an older actor in anything but an ad for a walker, medicine, Stairmaster, or emergency alert buttons. And in everyday life, in our everyday lives, the casual disrespect that old people experience is in common beliefs like we're all bad drivers, DWO, driving while old, that we can't learn the computer if we wanted to, that we don't mind being marginalized. By the way, that last is kind of true because so many of us accept all that as it comes with the territory. How could we not? We also live in the cultural cage, and we've been behind those bars since we were young. Healthcare for older people is often tainted by that same ageism, sometimes by undertreating, so that a condition that might be treatable is instead looked on as a feature of old age to be accepted and endured. Or sometimes conditions are overtreated, responding to expected changes as if it were disease, subjecting older patients to unnecessary tests and procedures. How is that possible? Doctors, like the rest of us, are in the cultural cage. Gerontology, by the way, is the least popular choice for young doctors for a specialty. And so there is a shortage of practicing gerontologists in America. No one wants to go into a nursing home and assisted living facility. They're expensive, they're understaffed, and yet there's been very little real change in nursing homes and assisted living facilities in recent years. And the long-term care ombudsman program, which sends volunteer advocates into the nursing homes to advocate for older patients, residents, the New York State spends less than $600,000 annually on this very, very important program. All of this adds up to what ageism is in America. But my concern and my conviction, and the reason I worry about even casual ageism, is that ageism is the gateway drug to elder abuse. You can't have one without the other. So now let's bring COVID in. In the cultural cage, we're already accepting as fact that all older people are weak, vulnerable, failing, frail as a group. Even if we happen to know, God bless her, 1 or 2 or 10 people who don't fit that bill. So when the media first frames the disease as one which strikes mainly older people, we accept it. It's a boomer remover. When government officials categorize people at risk first by age rather than their health vulnerabilities, we accept it. When public policy affirms and includes locking people in nursing homes and assisted living facilities, even in their rooms, inside their rooms sometimes, we accept it. And the understaffing that's plagued nursing homes for years, which was hidden when families were able to come in and pick up the slack by feeding and bathing and helping the nursing staff take care of their loved ones. When those families were no longer allowed in the buildings during COVID, it was revealed that there weren't enough staff, and people died of disease, of neglect, maybe of loneliness. The decision to further the homogenization of old people into one vulnerable, frail group and singling out old people as the reason for our precautions, as the cause of many of our economic challenges, was a foregone conclusion. In trying to persuade people not to go out into crowds without a mask, to isolate, not to travel, by saying, do it for your elders, eventually got the backlash it deserved. When people started to say things like, well, they live their lives, why should I curtail mine for them? Media and medical ethics groups talked about rationing medical care, triage, and one of the criterion for rationing was age. By the way, in Italy and Spain, it's legal to use age as a reason to ration medical care. Luckily, in America, it's not. But that doesn't mean that there are not proponents of it. People who say older people have had their fair share of life and should step aside in favor of young people. In fact, the lieutenant governor of Texas in March of last year talked about his certainty that elders wouldn't mind giving their lives for their grandchildren. And if that meant opening up the economy a little bit sooner, that was what it would be all right with him. It would be all right with us, he said. He says, and that doesn't make me noble or brave or anything like that. I just think there are lots of grandparents out there in this country like me, that what we care about and what we love more than anything are those children. Well, folks, I love my grandchildren. I promise I do. But I still have a life to live. And I'm betting that there are a lot of older people who feel as I do as well. It's this casual dismissal of lives that are often full of color, full of joy, full of work and ambition, and all the other things we value, that ageism leads to canceling out. It's time we break out of that particular cultural cage and think about age as a process and a time of life, and not just another word for impending death.
Thank you so much, Betty. More compelling remarks that you've been able to arrive at, both from your observations and experiences personally and your life experience. And I think, it certainly behooves all of us, to have that extra degree of awareness. You mentioned that so many of these biases that manifest themselves in other subject matter, sexism, racism, are just so deeply rooted in our institutions and our behavior, and are so implicit that a lot of times many of us do not even notice how we're behaving or we're acting, and that a lot of the forces that control the information that gets disseminated and that we digest and that we process just leads us to be participating in some of these behaviors without sometimes even realizing it. And I think that it was extremely thoughtful of you just to share your own journey in terms of the realizations and the revelations that you arrived at based on, just going from one period of your life to another period of your life. And I guess, the more awareness, the more thoughtful we are, the more informed we are, the more we are considerate about, what we're experiencing and how we're treating people is the way that we arrive at seeing change happen. So thank you for the, very personal perspective that was arrived at. Really appreciate that. So we're now, and just also in the event that I forget to do it at the end of the forum, just incredibly grateful to all of our panelists for taking the time to prepare their remarks, deliver them on video. That's not something that happens in the snap of a finger. A lot of thoughtful preparation went into all of our panelists' presentations to make sure that some meaningful information could be shared here today. And I think we did really achieve what we set out to do, which was to cover the entire spectrum of what our community has been experiencing over the last year and a half with the pandemic, how that relates to the population of older adults in Ulster County. And then, from a larger perspective, we expanded into just some of the perspectives that, we can all take into consideration in connection with our own activities and experiences. So thank you all very much. To Sue, Dave, Sharon, Nicholas, Jason, and Betty. We really appreciate it. You made this forum be able to be convened on this very special day, and you raised a lot of awareness and you informed a lot of people. So we're going to move into questions now. I have a list of some of the questions. I guess I would ask that I'll start off by just reading a question and identifying which panelist the question was directed to. And then maybe we can open it up a little bit. So the first question, and some of these are also observations, which is nice having an interactive audience, is for Sue Koppenhaver. It is from Crystal K. And it was regarding COVID and elderly being able to go to a vaccine site, and mentioning that Uber has offered free rides for elderly to get to a vaccine site. Mentioning also that, Uber, and accessing Uber is also something that takes some technical savvy. So I guess just the comment from Sue, I know a lot of effort was expended by OFA in coordinating both access to the vaccines and access to testing, and also delivering needs. So just Sue, what was your experience here in Ulster County with some of the other service providers like Uber or Lyft or volunteers, and how you experienced that?
Thanks, Mike. We noticed early on that folks were, not only calling for a vaccine, but also calling for rides. And luckily, the county responded pretty early on. UCAT said pretty early on in our emergency, in our EOC meetings, that they would take anybody to the sites for a vaccine for free. So I never actually got involved with Uber or Lyft because we had this service through UCAT to help. When we had a pod here at the senior hub, I know it was cold that day and people had to wait outside and there were a lot of unhappy people, but we managed to vaccinate 400 folks. UCAT brought a couple buses for people to sit in because they were cold. They really bent over backwards to try to accommodate people. And when I talk about bringing them to the site, when the site became both either the gym at Kingston High School, it was there first, and then it moved to Best Buy, where it is still. And in a lot of other places, you can still get a free ride from UCAT if you need a vaccine. So honestly, I didn't really deal with the private companies. We did have a couple people call us in the office saying if seniors want to lift, please give them our number. So we kept that number and name of a couple people handy for the few people who called for something like that. And again, we had a lot of homebound folks that were able to be taken care of in their homes too. So for those who couldn't get out or couldn't walk. I hope that, kind of answers the comment. I did see that comment.
Sure, thank you, Sue. I think that did, and I think we were fortunate here in Ulster County and across the state that there were a lot of service providers that emerged and promoted themselves both in the private sector as well as not-for-profits. And again, it was a collaborative effort. Everybody came together. So it's encouraging to know that was a collateral support. I also want to introduce, along with the panelists who spoke, I neglected to do that when we started the Q&A, Erin Baroud, who is with legal services of the Hudson Valley. She is the attorney in charge there, and she just waved her hand to us. So if you have any questions for Erin, feel free to include those. So our next question is for Dave Clegg. It's from Cassandra Beam, and wondering what, if any, supports are in place to help speakers of other languages who are even more vulnerable potentially to some of the scams. And before I let Dave answer, I know that all of our departments throughout Ulster County have language services that are available, but I'll hand off to Dave to explain how that's done in the DA's office.
So our financial crimes assistant district attorney, Jessica Schutzman, speaks Spanish. We actually have in this office people who speak something in the area of 8 different languages, so that depending on what the language is, we have a very good chance of one of our ADAs being able to speak it and to interpret and to support the person.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Which again is across the spectrum of the county workforce. I know a lot of options are available regardless of what language we may encounter someone in our community that we need to be able to communicate with. The next question is for Sharon, and the notes that I'm looking at tell me that this might have been discussed a little bit in the chat, but I'd like her to maybe expand on it a little bit. And just in terms of Sharon's perspective and experiences, it's a general question about maybe what people might be able to do in terms of prevention, knowing that the enhanced multidisciplinary team is obviously responding to incidences that have happened. Maybe you could offer some suggestions around that, Sharon.
Yeah, I think we need more prevention programs and outreach into the community. In the past, pre-pandemic, there were grants which primarily came out of the Office of Aging and Office of Victim Services by way of lifespan. As a matter of fact, Mike, if you remember, we had, I think, 3 of them over the course of 3 years. They were put on hold as a result of the pandemic. And my hope is that we go back to funding prevention and education programs, because people really are not aware of what is available in the community. And that's across the board in terms of services. It's not just in terms of elder abuse. I don't think, I know that Office of Aging does a tremendous amount of outreach. I know that DSS does a tremendous amount of outreach. Dave, I'm not sure how much outreach your department does. I know at one point, and this goes back several years, there was some outreach being done primarily on financial abuse, but this goes back probably to around 2005, which is a very long time ago in the scheme of things. I think we need to go back to doing more of that. And I think we need some funding to do it, actually.
That's a good idea. I would say that Patrick, who is our consumer affairs
Yeah,
person,
he was.
gets out into the community. And I agree, you know, the pandemic has slowed us down a little bit in terms of getting out into the community, but we can certainly do more of it as we move forward.
Good, because it's necessary.
That's really encouraging and absolutely great suggestions. Thank you, Sharon, and thank you, Dave. I know that I think as we emerge from the pandemic, you know, we're going to continue to use all of the innovations and creativity that we did to strike a balance with getting back in touch with people in person. I think, again, today's forum is a perfect example of using some of the technology that got developed during the pandemic to be able to convene an event and then to build off of this. A couple of other, just one thing, Dave, if you could provide us with your slide presentation, if that would be available, I think some of our registrants would like to have that disseminated to them. So just making the ask on behalf of some people in the chat. And then the other question, again, for you, Dave, was that if you could just speak a little bit to Crime Victims Assistance Program, just to couch it, CVAP, Crime Victims Assistance Program, is a program that is in our Ulster County Probation Department, but is a program that works closely with the DA's office. And maybe you could just speak to some of the supports they provide to some of the persons that you're involved with prosecuting crimes with.
Yeah, we are fortunate here in Ulster County to have a terrific crime victims unit. It is operated out of the Ulster County Probation Department. They're extremely effective advocates on behalf of victims, and they can provide a multitude of different services depending on what the harm that occurred was. And so I would encourage anybody who wants to explore that to contact crime victims through the probation department. They are there. Obviously, we work with them whenever a crime actually occurs. It comes to our attention. We spend a lot of time with the victim to try and give that victim the support and the guidance they need. Crime victims then takes over and provides them additional support, some of which can be financial.
Great, thank you for that. I appreciate you describing their availability. We also work with them frequently. They do a lot of community outreach in terms of education and prevention. So we're fortunate, you know, to have that unit. I'm going to just call on Erin to maybe talk a little bit as the attorney in charge at Legal Services, the Hudson Valley, just briefly about, you know, some of the experiences and inquiries her office has received, you know, just on a regular basis and maybe pandemic related in regards to older adults in our community. Thank you, Erin.
Good morning. Bear with me, I'm losing my voice. The allergies are getting to me. So we see various different issues with older adults calling legal services. Actually today as participant, I have my colleague Nancy, who is located in our Poughkeepsie office, but she handles a lot of elder issues in our Kingston office. And I also have Lisa Laborski, who's joined as a participant, who is our Independent Consumer Advocacy Network representative, and she deals with managed long-term care issues. She's fantastic. But a lot of the issues we see are, you know, just the same as everyone else: housing issues, benefit issues, family law issues. And so we can, you know, take those cases, and while we do have an elder law specialist, You know, if you call with a housing issue, you're going to be served by our housing specialist a lot of times, or Nancy, depending on the exact issue and resources. Right now, we're seeing a lot of questions about the eviction moratorium, which has been extended through August. And we're really trying to work with our clients to reach out for the emergency rental assistance program, which the county has done a really great job of getting the information out there. And tonight we're doing a Facebook Live event with Michelle Hinchy's office and Antonio Delgado's office. But if you don't have the technology for Facebook, you can call the Ulster County Recovery Service Center if you need information about the emergency rental assistance program. We can put that number in the chat. But I think that's going to be a really important resource right now. Starting in July, the city of Kingston is really going to focus, they're funding us to focus on elder housing issues and income stability issues. You know, we do have a lot of housing in the city of Kingston specifically for elders. So if you're having any issues, you can reach out to us, and that funding starts in July, but you can reach out to us sooner. And so we are here for those of you who don't have technology, which probably everyone on here does, but our office is open by appointment. And so we continue to serve the community as best as we can in these times.
Thank you, Erin. And I appreciate that again. It's another indication of how fortunate we are in Ulster County to have legal services of the Hudson Valley with such a strong presence. I want to just give Bette an opportunity, having listened to the presentations and listened to her own remarks and listened to the conversation, because I know she frequently has insightful observations based on other meetings that we participate in together, and just to offer any additional remarks or suggestions around the subject matter. So thank you, Bette.
Well, first of all, I just want to mention that you're color coordinated with the upholstery in your office, and I think that's very classy, Mike.
That wasn't accidental, Bette. Someone in the office asked me to make sure that I wore this shirt, and I did what the person asked me to do. I'll reveal that I'm colorblind, so it's absolutely accidental, but I'm glad that it looks pleasing enough. Thank you for that compliment.
The thing that I want to say is, first of all, that I really enjoy working with the people on the elder. I keep saying the elder abuse committee because that's where I came in, but that's connected to what I want to say, which is that the emphasis that I want to make is that there can be no elder abuse if there is no ageism, which is why we have to really be aware in our everyday lives how much ageism affects all of us. And I think that's the takeaway for everyone. If we could figure out a sensible way to blur the lines between old and young, and see that we all live in the same world in terms of our medical care, in terms of our simple respect for one another, I think it would go a long way to erasing both elder abuse and ageism.
Thank you for that suggestion, Bette. And I think we're seeing just across the spectrum of what's going on in our county, our state, our country, the world, that the climate is changing around expectations with respect to each of us raising our awareness about issues, adjusting our behavior, maybe confronting some of our own habits and perspectives. And that's not something, that just naturally happens. Sometimes you have to expend some effort to take inventory on how you're experiencing things around you. And I think your remarks encourage all of us to do that. So thank you so much. And I know that in trying to monitor the chat, I think there's been some interesting additional questions posed that I believe have been answered on the chat for information. This presentation will also be available to be shared. It has been recorded. So I saw someone ask about that. We'll also get a hold of Dave's slideshow. It's part of the presentation, so you could get that separately or with the presentation. I guess I would just offer if there was anybody else on the panel who wanted to make any kind of closing remark. Fortunately, on my screen, I've got the panel in my top row. So if anybody had any additional remarks that they wanted to share as we wind down the forum, I'd be happy to hand off the floor.
I just want to say thank you to be asked to do this and to have given a soapbox for 12 minutes for what I feel are the issues that need to be brought forth. And I think other people might be agreeable on some of those, and some of those are very big ones to tackle, but it is possible to do changes like that. It just has to start someplace. I know earlier Dana had said he wants to be part of, I don't know if it was a group, Dana, or whatever you said, part of something. Hold on, let me look back. Certainly we can invite folks to be part of either the elder abuse task force or the interdisciplinary group. I didn't mean the elder empowerment task force. So Dana, if you would like to do that, just contact Mike's office and let them know that you have an interest in doing that. If anybody has any questions, I'm free to answer them.
Yes, thank you, Sue, for offering that. If anybody is interested in joining the Older Adults Empowerment Council, and it's been a lot of incantations over the years, so I'll just make it simple by saying if you want to be part of the effort, just call the office here. It's 845-334-5221, and we would be happy to have you join our effort, become part of our discussion. The networking that gets accomplished and the conversations that are arrived at and the referrals that are made and the awareness that is increased among all of us as professionals also has a profound impact on what we accomplish going forward. And relationships at the end of the day are at the core of everything that gets accomplished. And I can definitively say that I'm an enormously more educated, informed, and aware person and professional, having worked with all of these professionals over the last 7 years. So the experience has been incredibly worthwhile. So I would, echo, Bette and Sue's remarks. So I'll ask Sharon and Dave, anything more that you'd like to add?
Well, just to reinforce that the collaboration in this county is phenomenal, I believe. Mike, you and our offices work together extremely well in a lot of important areas, and this is one of them. And so I just want to extend my thanks to you and my appreciation for all the work that you do.
Right back at you, Dave. It does make what is difficult and challenging work very rewarding. When you have other committed professionals who have the same goal in mind, and it is a pleasure. Hopefully we arrive at a place at some point where we don't have to be devoting as much time to all of these things. But in the meantime, we give it our best effort. And Sharon, you're not, you're got to unmute, Sharon.
I would have to second that. As you know, we work in 4 other counties besides Ulster. And that is not only with the EMDT program, but also our Holocaust program. And Ulster County by far is the county that has the most cooperation between agencies and county programs of all of the 5 that we work in. And I'm sure there are some other people on this who may be from other counties, but it's the truth. And that's been a long-standing thing here in Ulster County in terms of cooperation. The silos are not as big.
Hey, Sharon, can you just quickly tell somebody how to make a referral to the multidisciplinary team, the EMDT?
I can, but if it's an elder abuse issue, it needs to go through Adult Protective Services as well. Or in some instances, people are more comfortable because they have a relationship with your office of contacting your office and then are encouraged to contact us. We can take referrals directly, but it really is better if they go through what is considered to be the reporting system for the state of New York, and that is Adult Protective Services.
Thank you, Sharon. And then I see Betty has her hand up. Betty?
I was just reminded privately that one of the things that we didn't talk about today is end of life issues, which is, and how important it is that we write advanced care plans and think about those issues. People talk about, you know, the phrase memento mori, which I think it means remember or think of death, and the benefit, if you think about dying every day, then it's a way of learning to live more fully every day. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's sort of interesting. But that's one of the topics that we don't think about and should be addressed.
Thank you for mentioning that, Betty. And yeah, I think certainly it's important for each of us or the people that are in our lives, you know, end of life decision making and things like estate planning do contribute to raising an individual's awareness and about what their circumstances, personal, medical, financial are, so they have more control that they've exerted over how things will unfold for them. Vitally important. You know, we have addressed it at some other events, and we'll definitely keep it in mind, you know, going forward. And thank you for mentioning that. So on that note, I will bring the forum to a conclusion. Again, thank you to all the panelists. Thank you to everybody that registered. If there is something that we missed, feel free to reach out to this office and we'll transact information. One final word of thanks to Dana Umbel at Ulster County Community College, who coordinated the technology on this flawlessly, and also to Beth LaValle in our offices here at DSS, who again really drives the train on all of the meetings that get convened, the planning that gets done, the flyers that get created, promoting and connecting everybody. So just really grateful to everybody who participated in this, and we'll look forward to doing this again next June. We may surprise everyone and do something else between now and then. I know that I'll see many of you in the near future in connection with other activities. So wishing everybody a safe and enjoyable summer, and look forward to continuing to work with everybody. So thanks very much.
Bye-bye.